There's no team in the NFL that is as out of touch as what the Steelers are right now. In the conference that's home to the majority of the NFL's best quarterbacks, Mike Tomlin and Lamar Jackson still continue to be delusional, thinking that they can win in the postseason with average to below average quarterback play. You missed on Kenny Pickett in the draft a few years ago. That shouldn't scare you from taking another swing with a young, promising quarterback with upside. The Steelers this past draft made the same mistake that they did in 2018 when they passed on Lamar Jackson, let him go to the Baltimore Ravens in favor of a box safety who has been a journeyman career backup. Passing on Shedeur Sanders not only was an incredibly idiotic decision by the Steelers, but this is going to be the nail in the coffin that finally gets Mike Tomlin out of Pittsburgh. You can say, oh, they can draft a quarterback in next year's draft. Are they going to be in position to land any of the top signal callers? Because you know Mike Tomlin is going to win 9-10 games, get the Steelers into the postseason, and they're going to be an easy first-round exit heading home early to Cancun because old man Aaron Rodgers is not going to be good enough to win the Steelers a playoff game against a prime Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Lamar Jackson. You cannot win in the AFC going up against aliens, bringing a straw to a gunfight like what the Steelers have continued to do at quarterback these last couple of years. You get what you paid for in this world. When you go cheap, you get cheap results. The Steelers had the NFL's cheapest quarterback room last year, and look where that got them. Ran out of the stadium when they played Baltimore. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and Minkah Fitzpatrick are not getting any younger. Even if you do draft a young quarterback in 2026, it's going to take them at least 2-3 years for them to be good enough to lead this franchise to a Super Bowl. And by that point, you're going to be on the last legs of Cam Hayward, TJ Watts, and Minkah Fitzpatrick's career. The Steelers had an opportunity to address the biggest issue that they've had since Ben Roethlisberger retired, finally having a franchise-altering quarterback. That's what Shedeur Sanders has the capability to do. And it seems like anytime the Steelers pass on one of these promising signal callers and they go to another team inside the division, it seems like they always turn out to be really good. At worst, Shedeur Sanders is going to be Kirk Cousins. At best, he could be a top 7 or better quarterback in this league. But is that a risk that the Steelers really should have taken? With how good Lamar Jackson has been with the Ravens, who gives a damn if the Steelers have a winning record against him in the regular season? That shit doesn't matter come playoff time. Lamar Jackson was running around doing whatever he wanted against Pittsburgh's defense. Drafting a defensive tackle, how does that help Pittsburgh win in the wild card round? It doesn't unless he can throw passes. Can he play quarterback? Will Howard went late in the draft for a reason. He's nothing more but a low-end starter, career backup at best. You're not going the distance with a guy like Will Howard starting for you in the AFC. He's not an alien. He's not a freak. And he doesn't have any outstanding traits. And he wasn't a better quarterback prospect than Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur has incredible accuracy. He's a good decision maker. And he has that it factor. You don't have that it factor with Will Howard. He benefited playing on the most loaded team in college football last year. You know where Will Howard was before he transferred to Ohio State? At Kansas State, where he got his starting job took by Avery Johnson, a younger quarterback who is just more talented than him. Passing on Shedeur Sanders was Mike Tomlin laying his bid or making his bid that he's about to lay in, because it's about to be the final move that he has made that's going to result in him eventually losing his job as the head coach of the Steelers. Eventually, the Steelers are going to have to move on and find a head coach that can get his head stuck out of his ass, stop thinking that you can win with a 1990s mentality where it's 2025 and you're going up against all of these aliens at quarterback. You have to get an alien of your own. Shedeur may not be the most physically gifted quarterback, but with what he has from mentality and an intangible standpoint, he was worth the Steelers investing a draft pick on. But yet you allow the Browns to get him in the 5th round, just like how you allowed the Baltimore Ravens to steal Lamar Jackson the back end of the 1st round in 2018. It's incredibly infuriating to watch a team that continues to do the same thing year after year and get the same results and still keep doing it again and again. The definition of insanity, Mike Tomlin always likes to talk about it in his press conference. He always likes to say changes are coming, but yet the Steelers have made no changes this offseason. Last year, you went with an old aging Russell Wilson as your starting quarterback over Justin Fields, and that pissed off Justin Fields, and that was the reason why he chose the Jets over Pittsburgh. And you're going to make the same decision again with a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers? I don't question if Aaron Rodgers is good enough to get the Steelers to the postseason, but he's not going to be good enough to get the Steelers further than the wild card round once they end up going up against these high-level aliens at the quarterback position. I still have nightmares when the Steelers went into that playoff game 3 years ago with Mason freaking Rudolph against Josh Allen, and Josh Allen ripped off a 50-yard touchdown run that I still have nightmares about in my sleep thinking of. That play right there is why you need to have an elite quarterback in today's NFL, at least a top 12 quarterback. The Steelers aren't finna get gifted a Brock Purdy in their lap. You want to know why the Steelers can't find a guy like a Brock Purdy in the draft? Mike Tomlin is Stevie Wonder when it comes to evaluating the quarterback position. This is the same guy who drafted Kenny Pickett in the 1st round. Any quarterback that wears 2 long sleeves and 2 gloves is a duck. There was nothing about Kenny Pickett that showed that he had what it took to be a franchise quarterback that could possibly lead the Steelers to a Super Bowl, which is why the Steelers shouldn't have been afraid to draft Shedeur. The comparisons that Kenny Pickett are insanity to me. He is a way better prospect than what Kenny Pickett was. Better athlete, stronger arm, just more. There's just more to like about Shedeur than there was to like about Kenny Pickett. And even if you disagree, Shedeur is still worth taking the swing. But the Browns are going to benefit getting Shedeur. And the Steelers, when Shedeur ends up becoming an eventual good starter in this league, they're going to go from competing for 2nd, 3rd place in the AFC North to finishing last in this division. The only reason why Mike Tomlin has been able to constantly overachieve in spite of refusing to find a long-term solution at quarterback is because the Cleveland Browns, they've had their fair share of misses with quarterback as well. But you saw when they had Baker Mayfield, when he was playing at his best, what happened to Pittsburgh? They got sent home. The Bengals, the Ravens already have their franchise signal callers. With Cleveland finally getting theirs, that further is going to push the Steelers down the ladder, not just in this division, but in the AFC conference as a whole. Because once again, there's another team that drafted a quarterback that you passed on that turned into a really high-end starter while you continue to put Band-Aids on the dam that continues to have so many leaks. You can only patch up a leaking dam for so long until eventually the leaks become too big to plug up, and the dam eventually falls apart. That's what we are about to see happen in Pittsburgh. The floodgates are about to open for Mike Tomlin. Passing on Mike Tomlin passing on Shedeur Sanders in the 2025 NFL Draft is going to be one of the final nails in the coffin that ends one of the longest tenured careers that we have seen out of a head coach in the NFL. Eventually, Amar Khan and the owner of Pittsburgh is going to get tired of not having postseason success. I've given Mike Tomlin a lot of breaks over these last couple of years because what can you expect him to do when you give him Mason Rudolph and the aging Russell Wilson in the playoffs? But eventually, You have to start giving him some blame, because if you continue to go into the season with the same quarterback situation, it's a you problem. This was a massive mistake, passing on Shedeur Sanders, that the Steelers made. That gives me flashbacks to them passing on Lamar Jackson in 2018. Hey, man, if you listen to podcasts, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. The Packers have signed the positionless unicorn Isaiah Simmons. Jeff Hafley, the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, is going to be tasked with trying to crack the NFL's most complex riddle, that being trying to figure out what position is Isaiah Simmons actually good at. He was a top 10 pick in the 2020 NFL draft by the Arizona Cardinals, and what made him so sought after was his ability to play a multitude of different positions along the defensive side of the ball. At Clemson, he played edge, linebacker, corner, slot corner, safety. And although the idea of having a player that has the ability to play a multitude of different positions sounds good from an aesthetic standpoint, when you're splitting so many reps in practice across a multitude of different positions, you lose meaningful time to develop and actually become good or great at one of those positions. So essentially, Isaiah Simmons, entering his 6th season on his 3rd squad, he is a jack of all trades player, but a master of none, because with the Arizona Cardinals, he was coached by Vance Joseph, who was his defensive coordinator, who is now the defensive coordinator of the Broncos. He recently led Denver to a top 5 defense last year. He was unable to figure out what position to play Isaiah Simmons at. He was moving them between linebacker and safety, and when he moved on to the Giants, they had a similar issue. They were moving him between both of those positions. No team, no coach up to this point has been able to figure out what position Isaiah Simmons is best suited for. And it's not a coaching issue. When you have a player that is this unique, not just any coach can figure out a way to put him in an area to succeed. You have to be a really innovative play caller to find a way to maximize somebody that has this kind of skill set. But also Isaiah Simmons, him being a liability in pass coverage, although he ran a really fast 40 for his size, he isn't the most agile neither. He doesn't really have good hips, so he's a liability in man coverage against tight ends and wide receivers if you put him in the slot. The best role for Isaiah Simmons is probably allowing him to be a 3rd or 4th nickel or dime linebacker when teams come out in 4 wide receiver sets and you want to have a little bit more size on the field. That's where Isaiah Simmons can come in and be really effective for you. But if you want to play him as a strong safety or free safety, he's not really suited at either of those roles because he doesn't have the agility or the lateral quickness to be able to be effective as a single high safety. And playing linebacker, he has the ability to be effective against the run, but in coverage, he's so bad where you don't want him out there. And over the last couple of years that he's been in the league, from his time with the Cardinals to the New York Giants, his snap count has greatly diminished. He went from getting over 90% of snaps in Arizona to going to the Giants, going from 33 snaps on defense to only 17% of the Giants snaps that he was on the field for in 2024. And that's due to teams just being frustrated at not being able to figure out how to utilize such a unique player, but also him not being good at either of those positions. So if Jeff Hafley can find a way to solve this riddle or this mystery with Isaiah Simmons, this isn't one of those signings that you just look at and you say, okay, this is good depth. This has the possibility of being a game-changing kind of player for the Packers defense if you can find a suitable role for him that fits his abilities. And nobody really knows exactly what he's good at because he hasn't really proven much anywhere he's played. So if the Packers can find a way to put Isaiah Simmons in the spot where he's able to thrive at, I would personally try him at slot corner. If you put him in the slot, you probably won't have him manned up against receivers, but, you know, he can be really effective being a blitzer off the edge. He can be really good in run support. And let's say you do want to use Isaiah Simmons in coverage against these slot receivers. With how big and physically imposing he is, he's going to be a mismatch for anybody he's lining up against in the slot. If you put him up against a Tank Dell or a Tess Johnson, he's going to take their lunch money. And I think he could be really good in press coverage. Or if you want to move him to edge, allow him to develop as a pass rusher, that could work as well. But it's just hard to figure out a role for a guy that can play so many different positions, but isn't really technically good at any of them. And probably he will be a backup. If a guy goes down, that'll be his opportunity to come in and prove himself. He more so is going to be a special teamer for Green Bay. But if he does get an opportunity to get significant snaps for the Packers this year, this is going to be his final opportunity in the league to prove himself. At this point, you weren't able to get a contract extension with any of the two teams that you played with, despite having that fifth-year option. You have to think this could be the end of the road for Isaiah Simmons if he can't put it all together with the Green Bay Packers. He hasn't been technically a bad player necessarily, but he definitely hasn't lived up to those high expectations. I thought he would have been the Shanghai Ohtani of defense. You play 4 different positions. It's impressive on paper. It's an impressive resume adder, but it's just hard to find good players that can even play one position at a high level. So to find somebody that can play 4 different positions at a high level is incredibly rare. At this point, Jeff Hafley has to figure out where is the position that we can best put Isaiah Simmons at that allows him an opportunity to play to his strength, something that no team has been able to figure out this late into his career. Year 6 is do or die, make or break for Isaiah Simmons. I'm intrigued to figure out how he's going to work out with the Green Bay Packers. Hey, man, if you listen to podcasts, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. The AFC North is playing puff puff pass with Deontay Johnson. This is his 3rd AFC North team as he has just signed with the Cleveland Browns. He started his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last offseason, he got traded to the Carolina Panthers. Then he ended up getting traded to the Baltimore Ravens. Then they cut him. He went to the Texans, got cut by them. And now he finds himself back in the AFC North again with the Cleveland Browns. Deontay Johnson is a talented receiver. His issue isn't what he does on the field. Although he does have a tendency to drop passes, when he's able to actually catch the ball, he's a really good receiver. He's a really savvy route runner. He creates a lot of separation. And when you think of the best receivers in the NFL right now, a trait that most of them have in common is that they know how to get open, running really good and sharp routes. That's what Deontay Johnson does. He's also pretty good after the catch. But his main issue is that he's one of the biggest locker room divas that you will ever find at wide receiver. So when he went to the Carolina Panthers, when they weren't able to force feed him the ball, he got mad. He wanted out. Understandable. At the time, Bryce Young wasn't looking too hot. So you trade him to the Baltimore Ravens. It takes him a while to learn the playbook. So, of course, you're not going to start immediately once you get there. But when Rashad Bateman went down for injury, and the Ravens told Deontay Johnson, hey, it's your moment, it's your time to shine, show us what you can do, he refused to enter the game. So the Ravens end up releasing him, and then he ends up on the Houston Texans with the injury that Tank Dell suffered during that Christmas Day game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And, he doesn't really get his number called that much. Then they end up winning the playoffs against the Los Angeles Chargers, which you think him and everybody would be happy celebrating a playoff win. But Deontay Johnson is pouting. He has a mute look on his face because although the Texans won the game, he didn't have an opportunity to get his numbers up. And Deontay Johnson is one of those players that if you're not getting him involved in the offense, he checks out the game. He gives you BS effort. He just gives up. And then he just becomes a locker room cancer. He's not a team player. He's one of those me guys. It's all about me. I come first. The team comes second. Hopefully, with him having another opportunity, this time with the Cleveland Browns, he's been able to reflect, get a little bit of humble pie in his face. And if he can end up actually working out with the Browns, they're going to have a really good wide receiving core. Him and Jerry Jeudy are two of the better route runners in the game. And whoever they have at quarterback, that's going to do them a huge solid. When you got two guys that are elite separators, it's not too hard to get them the football. And alongside of Cedric Tillman, this could be a really deadly wide receiver room with this addition of Deontay Johnson if he has his head on right. And Deontay Johnson was one of my favorite players in the NFL at one point. But with him getting paired up with George Pickens, it just became too much of a headache for Mike Tomlin to where you had to ship one of those guys off. And Deontay Johnson was the guy who was chosen because George Pickens was the better of the two. But if the Browns can find a way to keep Deontay Johnson satisfied, he doesn't end up, getting upset and messing up the team chemistry, this could be a really sneaky signing that the Browns just made. There's a lot to like about Deontay Johnson as a player, but as a person, he's not the easiest player to coexist with, and that's why he's on his fourth team within a span of a year. The Steelers, the Panthers, the Ravens, the Texans, and now the Browns. That's 5 teams within a span of a year. So when you're on 5 different teams within 365 days, that shows a lot about you as a person. So hopefully Deontay Johnson can find a way to make it work in Cleveland, but the AFC North has this guy in rotation from the Steelers to the Ravens to the Browns. I wonder if he's going to end up playing on the Cincinnati Bengals next season. They do have a need for a slot receiver.